In this module, we will learn the inputs, tools and techniques, and outputs of the Create Wbs process. This process uses an understanding of the project scope, or work, to develop a work breakdown structure and to obtain approval of the project scope from key project stakeholders. The work breakdown structure is a hierarchical decomposition of the work to be done. Higher level tasks are broken down into lower level components with more detail and shorter durations. There are 5 inputs to the Create Wbs process, which should be fairly intuitive based on the purpose of the process. The Scope Management Plan will describe the unique approach to how this process will be performed. This may include the frequency of iteration or the level of detail that must be provided in the work breakdown structure. It should also describe how stakeholder approval will be obtained, such as naming the stakeholders that will need to be involved and any strategies that will be used for reaching consensus. The project scope statement is a key input to this process, since the major theme of this process is to decompose the work that is found within this scope statement. The requirements documentation may also be considered as an input to this process, since the WBS will typically be deliverable oriented. Enterprise environmental factors may include organizational culture and infrastructure. Some organizations may have particular standards as to how a WBS is created to ensure that the resulting data is compatible with tracking tools such as accounting packages. Organizational process assets may include templates or other lessons learned from past projects. The key tool and technique for this process is decomposition, which is basically just another word for breakdown. This is the technique of reviewing all of the work in the scope statement and organizing it into smaller, easier to manage components. As work is broken down into smaller components, those components can be broken down further until a reasonable level is reached. The most detailed components can be called work packages. Various levels of expert judgment will be required to ensure that work is broken down logically and that all work is accounted for. To better understand decomposition, let's examine a simple example of moving the operations of a small office from one location to another. After developing our scope statement, we can begin to organize the work into 3 major components or project phases: packing the belongings of the original office, transporting everything, and unpacking the belongings in the new office. Each one of these components or phases may result in some intermediate deliverables. Examining the first phase, pack belongings may reveal more detail. It can be broken down into 2 smaller components, pack items and load truck. Similarly, pack items can be broken down into even finer levels of detail: acquire supplies, disassemble equipment, packing fragile items, wrapping furniture, and packing books. Even some of these components can be broken down into further levels of detail. Loading the truck may be broken down into big items and small items, but may not require additional levels of detail. Transportation and unpacking can also be decomposed to help reach a reasonable level of detail where the project work can be better understood by project stakeholders. The result is a work breakdown structure, or WBS. The lowest unit of any branch of a WBS can be referred to as a work package. Each work package can be assigned a unique identifier, known as a code of accounts. This can help cross-reference the work packages in the WBS with other project documentation. The key output of the Create WBS process will be the scope baseline, which plays a very significant role in the project management framework. It should be thought of as a package of documents as opposed to a standalone document. This package will include the scope statement, which was an output of defined scope, as well as the WBS and WBS dictionary, which are developed within the Create WBS process. The WBS is the hierarchy developed as a result of the decomposition, which was just mentioned. As the work packages are developed, it can be useful to track information associated with each work package into a WBS dictionary. This may include a description of the work, the organization responsible if work will be contracted, assumptions that have been made in the way that the work will be performed, or constraints that may exist in the way the work will be performed. The Code of Accounts is a useful tool to help cross-reference documents, such as the WBS dictionary, back to the WBS. Once these three documents have been brought together, there is one final step that must take place before we officially have a scope baseline. Since all further project planning and execution will be based on project scope, that final step is obtaining consensus and approval from key project stakeholders. This involves having key stakeholders such as a project manager, technical lead, sponsor, customer representatives, or others to review this package of documents and agree that it represents all of the work that should be accomplished and only the work that should be accomplished. It is likely that there will be some last-minute adjustments and compromises. However, once stakeholders give their final approval, the package of documents can be referred to as a scope baseline. The term baseline holds special meaning in the project management framework. Once a baseline has been approved, it is considered to be part of the overall project management plan, which will be used to guide project execution. Further, baselines will be governed by more formal change control processes. This means that once a baseline has been approved, the only way for it to be changed is through the approval of the Change Control Board in the Perform Integrated Change Control process. Baselines will also provide a basis for measurement to compare actual work performance against planned performance during monitoring and controlling. While change is a natural part of project management, baselines can only be modified if changes have been formally requested and approved by a designated change control board. This process, sometimes known as rebaselining, must be well documented to ensure that stakeholder understanding of the desired performance goals is current and accurate. While older versions of baselines should be kept for historical purposes, the use of the word baseline by itself should always be in reference to the most current version. Meaning, at any given point in time, a baseline is the originally agreed upon plan plus all approved changes to that plan to date. You can refer back to the module on the Perform Integrated Change Control process for a review. Finally, many processes may lead to updates to project documents. Since project documents are not subject to the same levels of approval that the baselines are, these updates may not require formal change control. However, to ensure best practices of proper versioning, access control, and notification, it is important that configuration management rules are followed. The Create WBS process can be thought of as the grand finale of scope planning. It brings together an understanding of product requirements and project scope to create a formal approved plan for project work. The scope baseline includes 4 major components: the project scope statement, the WBS, the WBS dictionary, and approval from key project stakeholders. This baseline is considered to be part of the project management plan and will be used as an input to many other project planning processes. It will be used to guide the execution of project work and provide a reference point for performance measurement during monitoring and controlling. Once established, the baseline can only be changed through formal change control.